I'm seeing technologies really entering our industry in two major ways. One is in solving the life of the scientists and helping them to do better science. And two is to actually, enable better discoveries and to develop drugs better. We want digitalization to actually enable the scientists to do the best science that they're here for. I'm also seeing more and more utilization of digital tools in healthcare. Even if you look at the way healthcare and the healthcare industry is changing, right?
The cloud is great. It solves a lot of real-world problems, but it's not just one cloud anymore. Public clouds, private clouds, edge clouds. The average business uses 5 different cloud providers. It's become chaotic and complex, with unpredictable costs, inconsistent security, multiple management tools, and different formats for workloads that span cloud platforms and providers. But it doesn't have to be that way. The Dell Technologies Cloud, powered by VMware, can be the one constant across your clouds. It brings consistent infrastructure and operations to your multi-cloud environment, so you can choose the right cloud for each application. A public cloud that lets you easily tap into services. A private cloud that's fully under your control. Or the edge with cloud as a service. With a true hybrid cloud experience, your business becomes more agile with simple workload migration and easy onboarding for new assets. Your teams get to market faster. With simplified operations and automated processes, you reduce risk and strengthen your security profile. And with Dell Technologies Cloud, you have flexible consumption options, reducing your total cost of ownership. Like it or not, the business world often requires many clouds. Now, that's easier than ever, with consistent infrastructure, operations, and services across all your clouds. You get the cloud without the chaos. The Dell Technologies Cloud.
Bringing another business leader from the world of pharmaceuticals. That's Dr. Sarah Kenkare-Mitra. She's the senior vice president at Genentech Roche, where she leads the Translational Sciences organization. This organization is responsible for basically successful translations from R&D through development. And her team and she have had a real impact on the development of a number of biologics that have led to popular drugs like Avastin, and the list is so long that I can't mention them, but more importantly, I can't even pronounce those names. But Sarah herself has been responsible for 80 new drug applications, well known and lots of accolades from her business colleagues and institutions in the pharmaceutical world. But the most recent one that struck my attention was that in 2018, she was recognized as a fierce leader in life sciences. And Sarah's not just a fierce scientist. More importantly, she is fiercely passionate about women empowerment. She actually led and launched the initiative for sciences for women at Genentech, and she's deeply committed to organizations that are focused on helping adults and children with development challenges. A fun fact about Sarah is that she is a painter. She's got a very strong aesthetic sense. She loves doing flower arrangements, and she has the most fun Halloween costumes. So thank you, Sarah, for joining us. And after your talk, Dipti Desai will be leading the Q&A. Dipti is an ex-CEO of Falconet and currently works in an organization where she's responsible for partnerships from West Coast companies with India. So over to you, Sarah.
How can you make a positive contribution to society while also getting returns on your investment? One place to look is in developing countries and emerging markets where millions of people need better ways to address healthcare needs. Every year, countless people face catastrophic health expenses that lead to financial ruin, impacting them as individuals and families, but also society at large. One approach to address this need is creating a pay-as-you-go health wallet that individuals, particularly the poor, can use to finance or save for medical expenses and health insurance. If someone can automatically set aside a small amount of money on a regular basis, they will be prepared when a need arises and avoid a potentially catastrophic setback. The good news is the technology already exists to do this, and because the vast majority of people in the developing world have mobile phones, the time is right to create new and better tools to support their needs. In sub-Saharan Africa, mobile money accounts went from 200,000 in 2006 to over 277 million in 2016. One effort in Kenya has shown the health wallet model works. Mtiba users have demonstrated that it's possible to save, send, receive and pay for medical care all by mobile phone. We believe combining catalytic funding and first loss capital with private equity can get the job done and effect significant positive change.
Welcome, Sarah. We're really honored and privileged to have you here. So to begin with, tell us a little bit about Genentech, which is now part of Roche.
Yeah, thanks, Dipti, and thanks for inviting me. So Genentech is a biotech company which essentially started the biotech industry in the mid-70s, and today is part of the global Roche organization. Roche is one of the top pharmaceutical companies in the world, but Genentech is still the US entity, still very focused in delivery of new medicines and targeted medicines, as well as personalized medicines for a number of diseases.
That's great. It's really great to see a biotech company going into pharmaceuticals. And I recently read that global pharmaceutical sales are at $1 trillion US. And the US contributes more than 450 billion in revenue. I'm sure Genentech and Roche is a significant portion of that. And cutting edge technologies such as AI, blockchain, robotics are steadily transforming drug R&D, pharmaceutical logistics, and drug distribution by leveraging data and improving inefficient workflows. It would be great to hear from you. So can you tell us how you or Genentech is leveraging these technologies in the development programs that you run?
Yeah, no, clearly. I mean, I think as the world is becoming more and more digital, the utilization of those technologies across the industry is growing. There's simply no doubt about that. And I mean, I see it as sort of two-pronged, right? It's growing, one, in terms of just enabling the day-to-day, the work that happens. So that's through enabling our workflows, enabling how data, for example, gets collected, how it gets managed, assembled, curated, how we then use those data sets, right? And being able for the scientists to be able to seamlessly do their science in a way where the digital technology is actually aiding their ability to do the science. So that's one thread, right? We want digitalization to actually enable the scientists to do the best science that they're here for. On the other hand, we also want to use new digital methods and technologies to actually impact drug development and to impact the discovery of new drugs as well as the development of new drugs. And that shows up in a multiple different places from, at least in the R&D world. You can imagine that we are using advanced computational techniques. You brought up AI and machine learning, but it also extends from things like bioinformatic techniques and modeling and simulation. I mean, when you think about our industry, with the human genome being really sort of out there in the last few years, the amount of data that we generate, both preclinically as well as, in from our patients, et cetera, the sort of the depth of the data, the type of data, the scale of data, everything has changed. And so we are now seeing utilization of these kinds of technologies in our ability to actually go in depth into those data sets, to analyze them, and to see what insights we can get. So for me, I'm seeing technologies really entering our industry in two major ways. One is in solving the life of the scientists and helping them to do better science. And two is to actually, enable better discoveries and to develop drugs better.
Yeah, that's really good. That's a great overview. I was wondering, would you be able to share a specific example, maybe, to get the audience? Our audience is mostly technology geeks, I would say, and engineers and professionals. And maybe it'll be good for them to see a flavor of how a specific technology is being used. Would you be able to share a specific example?
Yeah, I definitely can. So if you now think about, let's talk first about this enabling science, and sometimes that's like the less interesting, because people you apply AI to get better insights. But I'll come to that. But when you think about, digitalizing the workflows and digitalizing lab operations and digitalizing how we collect data, that could have a tremendous difference in our ability to actually do what we ultimately want to do, which is get depths, of insights of biology, do better drug discovery, etc. So a couple of examples on that area, right? So one of the big challenges is, since scientists for years have been working in labs where they take notes on their lab notebooks. They have this sort of practice of writing everything that happened in their experiments and their results and doing everything in lab notebooks. And there's a mindset change that's happening, which is essentially like, with today's technology, you don't need to do that. You can use electronic lab notebooks, but if you do it consistently, right? And if you then do this consistently, the value is not only to you in terms of actually making your work easier, but there is a secondary value which a scientist may not see at that time. And that secondary value is using this data sets for a secondary use. So they may get an answer to their experiment, but at some point you'd be able to put data together if they were all electronically available, accessible, findable, etc., so that then they could be used to ask some other question, like, is there a trend here between X that was done, Y that was done, and A? But if you can't find X, Y, and A without actually asking those people, you have a problem. So that's like a simple, what sounds maybe very simple, but in our world, if that hadn't been that, now it's found, and this is something a lot of companies are grappling with, we have so much data from our patients, but the data sets are in silos in terms of, for that particular program, for that particular study. And if you were to sort of say, hey, we have now looked at over the last 30 years programs of this type, what did we find? It's really hard to put these data sets together because they originally weren't created and sort of organized in a way that they could just be zipped together, right? And we want to be able to zip those things together. And now prospectively, we are beginning to do that. But in those days, we weren't able to do it. So you can see that technology is playing a big role now to actually get this together, because there might be some real valuable insights in those data that we never tapped into. We only asked the primary question. And the same is true on the application side, right? We are trying to use novel technologies and digital technologies, both as like biomarkers in our trials that will tell us if drugs are working, as well as to mine these data sets that I just talked about to look for those insights, and to look for what it's telling you be a primary question.
That's great. It's really amazing how when you aggregate the data, 1 + 1 makes 11 as opposed to 2. So that's great, and we all can relate to it. We came from that research background, so So that's a great overview of what you're doing at Genentech. But outside of Genentech, throughout the industry as a whole, what are the trends that you are noticing?
Yeah, I think some of these things that I just talked about are actual pain points and also areas and advances that I'm seeing across industry, right? I think everybody wants to make sure that our data is findable, this verification of data, findable, accessible, readable, etc., is really important. And I'm seeing that across the industry, which I think is a great trend, because our ability to organize data in a way where you can actually do these things is fantastic. I'm also seeing more and more utilization of digital tools in healthcare. Even if you look at the way healthcare and the healthcare industry is changing, right? Even our experience as a patient when you go to the doctor's office, then the number of tools that are becoming digital are having an impact in our pharmaceutical industry too. So, for example, our clinical trials, we are trying to make sure that the tools we use during our clinical trials, whether it's the access to the patient or the incorporation of endpoints, etc., even those, getting them to a fully digitized state would make a huge difference for patients and for us, right? And that's happening across the industry. And then finally, the use of a lot of experimentation is happening with sort of advanced analytic tools like AI, machine learning, etc. I think the jury is out as to which areas it will be the most helpful, but clearly, as is happening across, for example, with imaging endpoints, you're seeing that radiologic imaging or digital pathology are areas where more and more, as you can digitize images, etc., our ability to find insights from them, as well as to just quantitate things you already know, is going to be very important. And as that changes, that has an effect on our industry too. And we want to be part of that evolution that's happening.
So true. I mean, advocate of bringing technology and healthcare together. And we've gone through so many cycles, right? Remember in the 80s, we thought, oh my God, AI, that's going to transform. And then same thing happened in 2000. Finally, I think it's there to stick, right? So all technologies go through a hype cycle followed by reality.
Yes.
So
yes.
where do you see intelligent technologies panning out in the pharma industry? We talked a little bit about it, but what, in your opinion, are the limitations today? Where do you see the challenges?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, to me, I think one, at least for the pharma industry, one challenge is still the data, right? You can have all the technologies you want in terms of analytic tools, but if you don't have your data sets, the right data sets, right? And by that, I don't just even mean the structure of the data, but the actual collection of the data. Because remember, our technologies of collecting the data are also changing. The assays we use today to do a particular analysis is not the same assay you used 10 years ago. So then you have to ask the question about comparability of those data and whether you really, all the data that you have are actually the same data. And can you really compare something from a trial 10 years ago to a trial today? So there are complexities that you need to think about around the data that makes this next question, which is application of the tools, very challenging. So that's number one. Number two is, I think the proof will be in the pudding. I think I'm seeing that there's a lot going on in the industry around using AI on drug discovery, for example, where if you could do a lot of data generation in vitro, etc., and then AI tools, perhaps fast forward the speed of which we do drug discovery, right? That's know yet if we'll do that, but to use AI and machine learning towards drug discovery. So clearly that's one thread. The other one is with our patient data, really looking for insights from our patient data, applying AI algorithms to imaging endpoints or to digital endpoints. But all of that is, the caveat is data, high quality data, large scale data, and really being able to get that data set, good data set that'll allow you to use that tool. So yes, hype, I think it's still in that early cycle. We are beginning to get more data. So I think it's getting a little bit more real than it was 10 years ago. I think the algorithms are also changing. So that's wonderful. But now, will we see like real results? We'll say, X, Y, and Z are the places that it really helped us, discover a new drug, for example. For me, that's where the proof is in my industry. Like, can you find a new target? Can you find a new drug? And that's not that simple. But clearly it's good. We always want as many tools that we can find. This is one avenue that the industry is going to look into for sure.
So wow, lots of fascinating avenues for people who are in software technology, looking to go into healthcare and provide solutions over there. Let me see if I have some more questions out here from the audience that we can incorporate in this. And this is great. I mean, we could go on instead of 20 minutes, we could do this for 2 hours. So looks like we have a question from the audience for you, Sarah. And I know we just have time enough for one more question. That is, the question is, any advice you can give to the tech startups that are innovating in the space that you're working in? And what would you like to see? And what advice would you give to decision makers across the pharma and the biotech industry on how they can or should leverage technology?
I think, thank you, Dipti. I think that as it relates to tech startups, and clearly we see a lot of them that want to innovate in the space of biotech and pharma and healthcare, et cetera, and have great ideas. And it's fantastic being here in the Silicon Valley in particular, where, you can have sort of merging of healthcare, biotech, and tech all together. It's still that the challenge is still in the language and in understanding sort of the pain points and understanding the spaces of opportunity. I mean, I think that the first advice I'd give is to people in tech is to broaden your language and understanding of what is really going on in the biotech and pharma sector, and what are sort of the key areas of opportunity there. And I think for us in the pharma and biotech sector, we have the same issue. We want to make sure that our language is understood well by the tech sector, and that's when you can truly have opportunities matching. I think in terms of, I think the other part of the question is, what would you give to, advice would you give to decision makers across pharma and biotech, how they can leverage technologies? This is a complex question. I mean, I think in general, technology, evolving technology, we constantly have to be on the lookout and on the sort of, if you want to be on the cutting edge of what we're doing, we need to be always on the lookout of the cutting edge of technology and to determine, where things could address our needs, where things could allow us to progress faster. So advice is to just stay on the cutting edge and keep pushing, those boundaries.
That's right. Keep innovating. So thanks, Sarah. I would like to take this opportunity to thank both Sarah and Genentech for their time and support for TiECon. We truly appreciate it. And I would like to leave the audience with this video that Genentech has shared with us. It shows us it's never too late to get involved with science and technology or to become an entrepreneur.
What does science look like? Is it only in a lab where men in white coats peer into microscopes? No. Science is here, in this moment, in every question and every small step forward. It's here, in our own backyards. It never stops. It's never done. But every once in a while, it changes everything.